This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Welcome to Disabled Persons Assembly's Notable Radio Show. DPA is a systemic advocacy organisation run by and for disabled people. DPA is a pan-impaired organisation with members across the country. Over the next half hour, we'll discover how we can work collaboratively to achieve inclusion for all New Zealanders. DPA's Notable Radio Show, a whole new attitude.
Kia ora, my name is Amy Taylor and I'm your host on DPA's Notable Radio. Today we have an amazing community member come talk to us about Dunedin Pride. Welcome, Evelyn. I would like to just do a wee bit of an introduction. So Evelyn Robertson is recently run for the City Council. They are an amazing advocate for the queer community, and we need to consider the queer community whenever we have a conversation about disability, because there is a massive intersection between the queer community and our disabled community. There's some statistics suggest that vastly more people from the queer community actually identify as being disabled than in the general community. So this is a really important intersectionality that any disability conversation needs to include. So welcome.
Oh, Kira, thank you for having me.
So can you tell us a little bit about Dunedin Pride and its mission?
Of course, Dunedin Pride is a community organisation in Dunedin, and it's becoming a charitable trust. And its purpose is to affirm and celebrate the queer community and the rainbow communities of our city through putting on events and through advocacy and raising awareness so that people know they're not alone.
And that is absolutely wonderful. And the events, I've attended some of them, they're often really fun as well, which is wonderful and very welcoming to people that are not necessarily part of the queer community but want to be allies. And that's fantastic. So I would like to ask you, how does Dunedin Pride engage with disability advocacy alongside queer advocacy?
Mostly we engaged it through our own intentionality. When we're putting on events, that's a main factor of what we have to consider. There are not a lot of venues in the city which are free or cheap, and when you look at them, so many of them have accessibility issues, have sensitivity issues, so we have to rule some out because they're stair-only access, or they're in a loud area, or there are a lot of lights and other issues that would make it unsafe for those members of our rainbow communities which fall upon the disability spectrums.
Yeah, and I could really see that the few events that I have actually attended or have followed their progress of online, I can see that there's a real intentionality with your committee on actually making sure that the events at Pride are accessible to as many people as possible. And one of the things that really struck me was like a real dedication towards the neurodiverse community and those sensory issues that often more mainstream events ignore. So it's really commendable.
Thank you.
Why do you think there's such an overlap or intersection between the queer and disability affected communities?
There's a lot of the reasons, but I think it mainly comes down to how both disability and queerness are discovered, because I believe there are much higher rates of both disability and queerness than we recognise in our society. And the two main things that have people realise that they're either disabled or queer are having a reason to reflect on it or being put under stress. And both disability and queerness force you to really reckon with who you are, to take that time and sit and think about who you are, your relationships to others and your relationships to the world. And both of them, due to the nature of how we have structurally built our society, put you under a lot of stress. So there's a lot of forces at work there that both give queer people more time to think about themselves and realise that they're disabled. Because I know it sounds silly not to know you're disabled, but so many people just think that they're tired a lot. They don't realise they have chronic pain. So many people just think, oh, this is normal. Everyone's like this. Mm-hmm. And it's not till they actually have a reason to sit down and really think about it and really do research on something else. And the same's for queerness. So many people can go their whole lives thinking, oh, everyone feels like this, but you just don't act on it, or this is just something everyone struggles with, but then something happens and you realise you're disabled, or a disabling event happens to you, and you're suddenly put in that situation of having to think about your life, and you go, oh, that's here too. And there's also the medicalisation of queerness, which a lot of people, in order to get access to the care that they need as a rainbow person, have to go through the medical system. And a lot of the time, the disabilities will come up diagnosed through that process.
Oh, that's really interesting. What unique challenges do people who are both queer and disabled face in Dunedin? So we're talking about intersectionality now.
I'll mainly focus here on the trans community. And there are so many problems with getting access to medical care, both as a disabled person and as a trans person, when those are combined, because a lot of our system sort of puts those behind barriers. And so you'll be trying to get care for this, and people will just go, oh, but we won't treat you for what's clearly depression because that's just being trans, so you won't get help for that. Or there's a thing called the trans broken arm syndrome, which is someone goes to the doctor and they say, hey, I've broken my arm, and the doctor sees at their file that they're trans, and they go, oh, could this be related to the hormones? So there's all sorts of barriers put up. And then there's...
Yeah, it reminds me of obesity. As a disabled person, you often go to the doctor and they will say, well, you're overweight, so that must be the source of all your problems. And it's like, no, I don't think so.
Anything that others you just creates this barrier in the health process, and that can clog things up. And so there's a lot of it, like sometimes the advice that people get when they're trying to go through the process to get on their hormones will be, don't mention the anxiety. Like, yes, that needs to be addressed, but if you mention it before you get diagnosed, then you'll be waiting, another year, another 2 years, because they won't even start on what you need until they've sorted out what they think is more important first. And that creates all sort of systemic barriers in the health system.
So you can't choose your priorities for your own healthcare, no way? No,
it's all dictated by just the individuals that happen to be in those key positions. Because there's like 3 people in Dunedin that everyone has to go to. And
yeah, it can be very, very limiting. How do systemic barriers like healthcare, accessibility or discrimination impact these communities directly? Well, we've spoken a bit about this. Do you have anything more to add?
I will say that there's some other things. I've noticed a lot of the rainbow members of the community are also in the immunodeficient community, and so with the lifting of all the protections after COVID, a lot of the safeguards that we had before COVID have also gone away. So there's a lot of people who are not housebound, but there's a lot less opportunities where it's safe for them to go out. And so when we think about how it's affecting community for a community that's already marginalised, like the queer and rainbow communities, it's really important to think about how those people can be included, and like, what can we do to make sure that they're not isolated? Because it's really important that people aren't isolated in their homes.
Yeah, very true. And across the board in the disabled community, isolation is a huge issue. And if you add the intersectionality and discrimination that queer people face in our community on top of that isolation from being disabled or being immunocompromised, it takes a huge toll on people's mental health. It's really, really sad. And I'm really sad about this new total mobility legislation, because it's another barrier to actually getting people out of their homes and into their communities, which, it's a difficult time for people for sure. So let's talk about identity. So in some circles, people consider that being queer in itself is disabling, owing to the systemic barriers and discrimination that queer people face. What is your view on this?
Well, this is a hotly debated issue.
Oh, it certainly is.
I very much fall outside of the medicalist camp. I see that, yes, there are barriers and discrimination, but we have to look within the range of intersectionalities, and we have to look at how people are disabled and queer, not disabled from being queer, because if we simplify that discussion, we lose awareness of the more vulnerable members who are dealing with the multiple intersections. And so it can be a good rhetoric. It's quite good at winning over people who wouldn't otherwise be on board with supporting queer people. But I feel on the whole it damages the community as a whole, because we've got to look at the most vulnerable and build a universal design of care which looks for everyone, not just flatten people down to the sort of lowest common denominator.
Yeah, I think that my views on this is it really depends which model of disability that you are choosing to look through the lens of. And from a social model of disability perspective, i.e. the barriers are all external, then sure, you can count being queer as a disability. I do think, however, all the models of disability contribute something. DPA as an organisation is very social model focused, and the reason for that is that because systemic barriers are things that we can really change. But however, many people do fall under the opinion that the medical model has some things to contribute. So it's a philosophical debate for sure, and an interesting one, and I think that it has a place, and it's certainly a place something to be talked about in our communities. What are some harmful stereotypes about queer and disabled people that you would like to challenge?
The main thing is that it's a choice, or that it's just laziness.
Oh, gosh.
And no one wakes up in the morning and chooses to have fibro. No one wakes up in the morning and chooses to be, neurodivergent or, let's be honest, neurotypical. And just the same, no one wakes up in the morning and chooses to be queer. But that doesn't mean that when you wake up in the morning and you are those things, it's not a good thing to wake up as. These are things that are innate to who we are. We don't get a choice in them. We just get the choice in how we relate to them. And so much systemic stress is to say those things are wrong. But as an affirming organisation and as hopefully a society which has grown beyond those old rules and barriers, we can acknowledge that no, there is value in being disabled. There is value in being queer. It is beautiful to be disabled. And those who say, no, because you're different, therefore you're less, or therefore you're not as beautiful, we can contribute things that you so-called normal and straight people can't. So there is beauty in that. There is beauty in diversity, and there is beauty in the individual experiences that can imagine and reach things that the so-called normal experience cannot.
Yeah, and I think that leads into my next question. We're talking about affirming disabled and queer people, and I think what you've said is truly affirming. It actually, to say that these identities are something that actually is unique to the people that have these identities, and it is a positive contribution to society, and that diversity makes our societies more interesting and actually allows different contributions, different ideas, different ways of thinking. And it's something that I hold very, very dear. So I want to talk about the sort of inclusive events or initiatives that Dunedin Pride. Can you give me some examples?
Yes, we've worked quite a bit with the library, and they've been a fantastic partner in providing a more quiet space. And we've also worked with a DCC-owned yoga studio for the same.
Oh, cool.
And it's fantastic to be able to offer those opportunities, because a lot of times people think, Pride Night is going to be loud noises, it's going to be excitement. We won't go. And it's really important because our board is largely comprised of people who are neurodivergent or disabled. And so we're aware of those needs. And so we have always made sure to sort of affirm and celebrate the disabilities and make sure that we're inclusive. And I'm rambling, sorry.
you're not rambling. I think that it's really important that we talk about how the neurodiverse community needs to be catered for in our celebrations, because you're absolutely right. When one thinks of a stereotype of, say, a pride parade, for instance, there's lots of music, lots of colours, lots going on, and that can be overwhelming for a lot of people. And the library, I mean, the one event that I took my kids to was the drag story time, which... Oh, gosh, other than the protesters you had to walk through to get through the door, madness. But it really was just a calm group of kids listening to a story, and it was bringing a whole community together, like of people that identify in different ways. And there was no barrier that I felt to actually just participating in that community, and it was wonderful. And how can allies, whether they're queer or not, or disabled or not, play a role in creating inclusive spaces?
Oh, absolutely, everyone can play a role, and the main way is just intentionality, just to be aware. If you're running an event, if you're setting up an event space, if you're setting up a business, just stop and think, can everyone access this? Stop and think, can someone move a wheelchair through here? Can they even get in this room? How much noise is there? How much light is there? Have we provided a space for people who need to get outside for reasons other than smoking and just have a quiet moment? Because quite often, there'll be if you need to get outside, you can go out there, and it'll be 10 people vaping. And it's just important to have quiet spaces and the ability for people to remove themselves from the activity without removing themselves from the event.
Yes, I think that is very true. And as a disabled person, one of the things that I'm always particularly keen on is being able to access the loos quickly. And I often find that as a wheelchair user, they put me in a space where I really have to make a song and dance to actually leave the space. And when I go to the loo, I don't really want the whole group of people turning around and staring at me. That intentionality on where you actually, how you organise your space so that it is most accessible for the most number of people. And DPA advocates hard to do that in consultation with members of the disabled community, because we know our needs better than anybody else does. So let's look forward. What changes would you like to see in Dunedin as a whole to better support the queer and disabled communities?
Well, we have a great potential here. Dunedin has been recognised as the second most queer city in our country and as one of the rising global cities of queer tourism. And we have the opportunity to capitalise that. If the council leaned into that, if the city and businesses leaned into that, we could get investment, we could get queer interest coming here, and that would bring capital in, and that could be put towards making better, safer venues for us. There is, of course, the ever-present need to just put ramps on the buildings. It's ridiculous how many places you need to go up a staircase to get into in this city. And the other thing is that just so many of our free venues are being lost. And it's understandable, the costs of everything are going up, and insurance premiums are hitting all the churches, and so many of the small community halls have closed down in the last 10 years, not through malice, just the groups that were running it have slowly faded away, people have retired. And we need to really think about how the closing of those venues is impacting our community as a whole, not just the queer community, not just the disabled community, but all community groups in Dunedin are being affected by the closure of those venues, because once you take away those spaces that allow community organisations to put on events, you take away the events, and then you get people who the only time they left their house, because maybe they're retired, maybe they just have issues getting around, was for those community events. They're just sitting in their house for months at a time.
Yes, that isolation is, we've talked about it, it has a huge effect on people's mental health. And actually, in the long run, taking away things that benefit communities costs our government more, because you've got increased strain on an already really struggling mental health system. And people that are not well adjusted in their communities tend to be less able to work and less able to participate, less able to contribute. So we're losing people hours by some of this loss of community interaction. So, yeah, we really do need to think about how we get our communities together. And one of the other problems is that increasingly with the cost of living, people can't afford to volunteer. That their active hours have to be spent in paid employment because there just isn't the resources that people have to actually be able to give of their time freely. And that really influences many of our communities negatively as well. So let's look forward in a positive way. What is next for Dunedin Pride, and especially in terms of disability advocacy and accessibility?
Well, what's next for Dunedin Pride is really next year.
Which is just round the corner now. Gosh.
We've started a few initiatives, and we've got the ball rolling for next year's Pride Month, which is the entire month of March will be full of celebrations of the queer community, and it's in March when a lot of people are surprised by that, but we're a New Zealand organisation, so we celebrate the legalisation of queerness in New Zealand, which was of course in March, and we'll have numerous events to that, and we're still hammering them out, but hopefully they will all be accessible and affirming events.
Wonderful.
And one thing that I've been working on is bringing back the trans and gender diverse social group.
Oh, good on you. That's excellent.
And that's just a way for people to meet and join up because, again, loneliness and panic has really been gripping the community in recent months, and it's really important just to give people an opportunity to meet others like themselves and know that they're not alone.
Wonderful. That's a really, really important initiative. And yeah, certainly one of my own personal aims for the new year is to try and have some more in-person social events for the disabled community, of which the queer community is more than welcome to join in.
And I just remembered to also add that our chair, Mahana, has just finished a workshop on disability inclusion. So
wonderful.
There'll be a lot more expertise coming to our mahi in the future.
Fantastic. That's amazing to hear. So if listeners can take away one message about the intersection of queerness and disability, what should it be?
People are people. And no matter what else we are, we need to admire and love people and work for all of them. And that doesn't mean people as the average. It means reach out to every single person as they are with their specific needs. And if you can meet their specific needs, then you'll reach out to everyone.
Wonderful. So, contact details. How can people get involved with Dunedin Pride and support this work?
Dunedin Pride is welcome to volunteers and new members and just community support. You can contact us on our Instagram, our Facebook, or go to our website. There's a Google form up at the moment for people willing to be more involved in the organisation committee or volunteer for events. And of course, just come to events. Keep an eye for when they're happening. It doesn't matter who you are. We're open to everyone, and because everyone's important.
Wonderful. Well, it's been a real pleasure to talk to you today. I've enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to March. We're going to have a wonderful Pride in 2026. Right. This has been DPA's Notable Radio. Thank you all for listening. Ka kite and goodbye.
Disabled Persons Assembly is Aotearoa, New Zealand's first pan-disability national organisation, providing system-level advocacy for all disabled people. Membership is free for individuals. If you'd like to know more, visit our national website at www.dpa.org.nz or contact your local kaituitui or community connector, Amy Taylor, at kaituitui.otipoti@dpa.org.nz. Disabled Persons Assembly, a whole new attitude.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.